Let's talk about appropriate clinical site trial budgeting. I'm Dr. Jeff Kingsley. Welcome to another edition of Riding in Cars with Researchers. In my experience, most clinical research sites do not do a good job of appropriately negotiating their budgets. How do I know that? Well, because we have frequently acquired other research site businesses, and 100% of the time the contracts and budgets that we negotiate were superior to the contracts and budgets that we inherited in the acquisition or the merger. And there are plenty of research sites that we chose not to acquire, but we got to see their work as well. So, based upon that, I'm going to say that it is an issue. And it's frequently talked about at conferences. It was something that Christine Pierre used to teach about all the time in the early days of the Site Solutions Summit, what is now SCRS. It's a problem. So, what do you need to do? How do you fix this? One, you need to take it seriously. You cannot negotiate a budget casually. It's a job. You should actually be employing people who this is their full-time thing. Now, if your site is very small, you can't yet afford to do so. Grow your site to the point you can afford to do so, and in the meantime, you're going to have to learn how to do this. Point number one, know your costs. All your costs. Now, your costs are going to fall into different buckets. There's direct cost and indirect cost. Direct is what directly touched a patient. So your coordinator cost, your investigator cost, the cost of a CT scan, an endoscopy, an EKG is a direct cost. Indirect is the fact that you had to pay real estate. You've got a lease or a mortgage. You've got a finance department, a regulatory department, a contract and budget department, business development efforts that went into landing that study. There are all sorts of other indirect costs that have to be allocated to that trial. An additional way to look at your costing, you've got things that are very time-based. CRC time, investigator time, is time-based. How much time does the investigator have to spend meeting with a monitor, and on what cadence? How much time does it take for the research coordinator and the investigator to do visit number 3 in that protocol, let alone answer queries, emails from the project manager and CRA, doing CRFs, etc. And then there's the stuff that is not time-based, like a CT scan or an endoscopy. If you're contracting for that CT scan at a hospital or an independent radiology facility, what is the cost that they are going to bill you for that CT scan? That's negotiable. You should be negotiating that with them long before you ever even get this trial opportunity, because otherwise you're behind the 8 ball already. Get the most favorable terms possible to be able to do that CT scan. And then you'll know when you're doing your budget negotiation that you have to put in reimbursement at least that much, because your staff are doing work in scheduling the patient, following up with the patient, documenting the results, and all the like. So your pass-through should not be exactly what the cost of the CT scan is. Otherwise, you're actually losing a little bit of money doing the CT scan. And then there's inflation. So let's go back to the beginning. What's step number one? Step number one is knowing your costs. What's the cost of a CT scan, an EKG, a CBC, a CMP at the local lab? What is my cost for my research coordinator or my investigator? What does my profit margin need to be on that person's time? What is the average time for a research visit? What is my overhead? Overhead is all that other stuff, right? It's the indirect cost. It's the cost of the fact that those patients had to be seen in a facility that you're paying for. You're paying a light bill. You're paying a gas bill. You're paying for heating and air conditioning and routine maintenance. What is the cost of your overhead? One, you have to know all of that well in advance of a research trial negotiation. Two, dig into the protocol. What does this protocol actually require? How many visits? Do we have an anticipation of the screen failure rate? Do we have an anticipation of how many unscheduled visits there will be? Are patients, there may be 12 visits built into the protocol, but are patients going to have frequent unscheduled visits because of the way the protocol was designed, the nature of that trial? Maybe it's infectious disease, and every time the patient feels ill, they come into your facility for an evaluation. Dig into the protocol and then start building out what you think your budget actually looks like. You've got to put in your direct cost as I described, your indirect cost as I described, your overhead as I described. And then you're not done. Then you need to start looking at the invoiceables. If there's an FDA audit, that wasn't your fault. Now, if it was your fault, you shouldn't be paid for that. But if it wasn't your fault and it's just an FDA audit because you were picked or because you're a high enroller, well, then you should be reimbursed for that. Build it into your budget. What if there's a sponsor audit? What if there are amendments? And as we all know, there are lots of those. And every time there's an amendment, that's requiring work of you and your team. The amendment may require a new contract and budget negotiation. It may require IRB submissions and a new informed consent document, which then means you have to then reconsent all the existing patients in the study. All of that is cost. You need to build all of that into your budget negotiation up front. I will stop there on my little rant. Take budget negotiation very seriously, and then I haven't even touched on contract terms. Make sure you're getting paid in a timely fashion. But thank you. As always, thank you for riding along with me. Food for thought. See you next time.